And wait. Okay, I think we're live. It says we're live. There's a big red button. You guys all see it too, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We do have a digital audience and an analog audience. We've been tampering with LinkedIn Live, trying to get more competent about building relationships and community using LinkedIn. But we also have this great studio space. And I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it was that like being in the same room with people, even people you don't like all that much. I hope that's not true here, but it means something, right? It's valuable. I think we've learned that in a real way. So for our newest friends who are on the line right now, my name is Stephanie Ruth Grimbley, and I am the founder of New Territory. And we are a customer value consulting practice committed to the growth of Canadian enterprises, and as a result, the Canadian economy.
Woo!
And that's why we have a live in-studio audience, so we can bring a little bit more flavor, a little bit more energy. We appreciate all of you for putting on pants, trekking a distance, and being here with us today. I'm sure even our digital audience can appreciate the peanut gallery comments. So I will introduce these lovely people that are beside me momentarily, or actually invite them to introduce themselves. But first and foremost, I wanted to express like why we're here. I've always had a big vision, a big mission I wanted to achieve by creating what would eventually become New Territory. I always wanted to create a win-win-win scenario, a hat trick, if you will. The first is to grow Canadian businesses. We have over 1 million small businesses in Canada. So this represents 70% of our employment and 50% of GDP. So arguably, by growing some, we're not going to be able to address all 1+ million. By helping some of them grow into mid-sized enterprises that are more efficient and more competitive in the global market, we would be helping the overall GDP in Canada to grow and increasing, hopefully, the average quality of life and prosperity for Canadians. So that's number one. Win number two is how we want to do that. And that's by increasing the value that these businesses create for their customers. So we're talking about customer experience, satisfaction, and loyalty, which do have great financial impacts on those businesses downstream. I've been in the workforce for over 20 years now and almost exclusively in customer-facing roles. And I can tell you there's lots of room for improvement when it comes to customer experience, satisfaction, and loyalty. I have also studied in academic institutions the human body and the human brain, and I can assure you there is more to how customers become satisfied and become loyal than meets the eye. And lucky enough for us, science and technology have come a really far way in terms of understanding those nuances and also being able to address them, to be able to measure and manage those underlying systems. And so by achieving win number two, we achieve win number one. For the hat trick, win number three, as someone who did a lot of education myself and also worked a lot of different jobs and saw the value of experience and education on both sides, I wanted to do all of this by hiring eager, smart, educated, but inexperienced because they spent so much time in school, young Canadians, because there is a real, actually an equivalent impact on their lifetime earnings by having more on-the-job learning equal to formal education. So pretty ambitious, can't do it alone, certainly not going to address a million different small businesses alone, but we're going to do our part. And luckily, we are not the only ones on a similar mission in terms of the Canadian economy. We're not the only ones talking about it by a long shot. If you follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube, you will see we repost a lot of the other content. The Peak actually just put out a podcast recently. Some of us have already taken a listen to it around the need for greater productivity in Canada. Not only do they talk about what we talk about in the podcast, but they also talk about how other people are talking about what we talk about. So we're not the only ones by a long shot, but more people need to be involved. We all need to participate. We're all beneficiaries, contributors, participants in the economy. And so we should all be participants in this conversation, which is why all of you are here with us today. And we're so grateful to have you, because we want to talk about how too much time, money, and talent has been wasted in Canada for actually quite a few decades, but especially since the turn of the 21st century. So I like to joke that like maybe Y2K actually did happen. Maybe a curse came upon Canada. It wasn't in our computers, it was in our, unfortunately, our business decision-making. I've done a lot of reading and thinking about this. These guys have suffered through that with me. And unfortunately, more often than not, what we found is that business is the bottleneck when it comes to Canada's increased prosperity. Using the numbers that I've found from credible sources, about $200 billion in potential productivity have been wasted since the turn of the 21st century because Canadian enterprises, on average, have invested at least 50% less in the information technology that helps them be more productive. 50. $1.2 trillion in potential top-line growth, sales, that has been wasted since the 21st century because Canadian enterprises, on average, have invested at least 25% less in research and development and innovation. Unfortunately, we tend more often than others to use cost-cutting strategies and low-risk strategies to keep business going, to keep businesses profitable, as opposed to long-term plays of innovation and knowledge creation. And unfortunately, the downstream impact of that is that we now, in any given year, have roughly $34 billion in actual dollars in the form of student debt being serviced. And this is just student debt for this particular population, educated employees in a low-wage service job right now as we speak. So $34 billion in student debt that these people are servicing with their low-wage jobs that don't require a university education to begin with. So, really ambitious goal. We're not going to be doing it all ourselves. We're not even going to be doing like a meaningful slice by ourselves. But if we have conversations and get involved, especially throughout our individual careers, I think the people in this room and the people online and their networks, we can actually have an impact, just making different decisions for our own businesses, asking better questions or different questions of our friends who have their businesses, even just mentoring the next generation of potential university students a little bit differently than we would have 10, 20 years ago. So obviously really important conversation, but why now, right? Who hasn't read how to do a pitch? And there's always like, why now? Why should your audience care about right now? Well, I'll point out that since the turn of the 21st century, we've had 3 major economic crises, and we are currently in the middle of the 3rd one. And the saying goes, never waste a crisis, right? Right now, we're all sort of feeling the pinch, and wouldn't we all like something a little different than what we've been experiencing over the last few years, regardless of where you are in that education experience spectrum? I think we all would like some change. So I think that more than anything, why now? It's that. But also right now, because I think our luck has started to change. The Toronto Maple Leafs did just make it to the 2nd round of the playoffs. Woo! Yeah, that's right. That's right. Since 2004. Right? So before I bit off all of that student debt, right? So things are starting to change. We'll see how the series pans out. Didn't go too well last night, but we can hope, right? We can dream. So on that note, today we're not going to talk about all of these economic angles of the Canadian culture, Canadian business culture. We're going to focus on one, and it's the 3rd one, and it's the idea of the role of education versus the role of experience and the role of businesses in recognizing education and creating opportunity for experience. And to help contextualize what our young generation of talent is facing, especially during an economic crisis, I have this very good-looking group of people squeezed into this screen here to share their story. So we have some questions that we're going to ask them. And when I say we, I mean me. And if anyone in the audience, because I know there's people from a broad, sample of the Canadian experience who either have personal experience similar to these guys or have kids or employees themselves that are thinking about these same issues, we would love to hear from the Peanut Gallery. All right, so we've got some messages here from Prab, who also worked with us. He goes, "Let's go Leafs." That was the big takeaway, right? Thanks, Prab. All right, so question number one is, actually, no, before we get into that, little introduction to these beautiful people here, and we'll go this way.
This way.
Yes.
All right. Hi.
And make sure to speak loud so that the people at home can hear you.
All right, here we go. Hi, my name is Lily Moulton. I am a community manager for New Territory. I primarily, work with our design, the creative aspect of things. I run our YouTube channel as well. That's about it with me. Sarah, yeah.
Oh, this way.
Yeah, we'll go Wade. We'll go Wade and we'll go Sarah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm Wade. I'm a PhD student at the University of Toronto. I'm also a customer experience associate consultant with New Territory, which is a very exciting role for me because I think, satisfied customers and satisfied users are really the key to successful businesses. So really excited to work in this space.
What's your doctorate in, or?
Rehab science. I study people with chronic lung disease. So a little bit different than this.
Yes. Wade will especially relate, as well as my best friend Justine in the audience. We always connect our entrepreneurial experience back to our experience in the gym. It is a perfect analogy, and I'm sure you'll hear some of those examples from me tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Simon. I'm also a PhD candidate, almost done any day now, studying atmospheric chemistry. So I look at how smog interacts with plants, especially pollen, giving it a much greater allergic effect for people in urban cities. And so my background helps me in growing up in a small community on a farm and feeling like I really connect with a lot of the Canadian experience, living a very quiet life, being on a hockey team my entire life. My first job was actually hockey ref, and then I was a bylaw officer in my small community before deciding to become a scientist. And then here at New Territory as the senior associate, I'm just very passionate about helping Canadians achieve their goals, and because I love math. So I just kind of want to do math for everybody.
Honestly, I have been thinking about marketing us as just we'll do your homework for you.
I'd love to. I mean, pay me.
Yeah, you go to your kid's soccer game and we will do the number crunching. Let us do that for you. Yes. We'll go Vanch and then Michelle.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Vanch. I joined the same time as Wade as an associate here at New Territory. Funny enough, I think I'm the youngest member. I'm currently still in my undergrad, studying accounting and finance, planning to go either into my master's, hopefully, in one of the two. I really like looking at financial statements, seeing what businesses have done for the past 5 years, what they're planning, what they're outlooking. And while that goes really into kind of investing into a business, it's also just investing into my country as well, seeing where we're heading and what kind of obstacles are we facing, right? So I guess I was just talking about AI recently, and I shared this with everyone here at KPMG. One stat that came out was I think only 30% of businesses are using AI, which is funny enough because 90% of my school is using AI to do something, right?
In Canada, 30 something in Canada.
Yeah, 30 something in Canada, and it's 60 to 70% of the States, which is insane, right? And that's the kind of shift I want to see, where we're not laggers anymore, right? We're the ones who are innovating and making a really step forward into what we're good at, which is, a lot of mining and oil. How can we make that better, right? That's who I am. Especially
the AI conversation. I mean, we talk all the time about U of T being ground zero for a lot of the AI that's happening now, a lot of the language processing. So we have these great ideas, and then we immediately ship them south alongside that truck full of oil.
How's New Territory using AI?
We use email marketing. We also use transcription software. I have started dabbling with ChatGPT. I actually asked it to write a sad poem about Canada's lagging in productivity. And it was pretty good. I was actually surprised at how many verses this poem had. I could probably find it and read it out later. I'll recite it to the analog audience.
Want a dramatic reading.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Michelle Dowser. I am the other community manager at New Territory. I've actually almost been here for about a year,
Woohoo!
which is exciting. It's been a year. I'm trying to think what else. You need
Well,
to know
Michelle
about
was
me.
also the first full-time employee ever
Yes.
at New Territory, so that was a major change for us.
Yeah, even just like the changes between June 1st, 2022 to May is like May 2023 is completely different. It's really, really great to actually see our company like evolve. It's very interesting, and I'm very glad to be part of it.
Aw. This is a great segue, Michelle, because yes, the business has evolved because we're still pretty young, just like these folks here. I might look young. Don't be fooled by the hair dye job. There's gray hair underneath this, and I demand equal respect to the number of gray hairs that I have. But young company, often evolving. Sarah's been with me for 2 years versus just contract dabbling and then as an employee. But it's been your evolution as well, Michelle. And I think this is a great segue into our first question, which is essentially the experience that they have had navigating the career landscape in Canada, the career culture, because you came in, didn't have all the experience in the world, but you've learned so many things. Can you just list off quickly for the group here, how many different things that you did not know how to do coming in and how many you know how to do today?
Oh my God, so many. Even just like, so I do most of the written content on LinkedIn and everything like that. So even doing proper written content, which is interesting for our audience, updating our website.
So WordPress?
Yeah, WordPress. Just
HubSpot?
HubSpot. There's just been so many different things that like 11 months ago, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I was very unaware.
There's at least 5 different software platforms that you know quite well.
Asana.
Yeah, lots of different software platforms that businesses can benefit from.
Yeah.
And especially if they don't have to learn how to do them. They can just hire the person to do it for them. So Michelle, tell us about the time leading up to New Territory.
So before New Territory, I worked a full-time, low-wage service job. I learned that I wanted to do something different with my life, so I went to school for office admin. Did 2 years, graduated with honors, had 1 co-op because I did graduate and had college during COVID, so there was lockdowns I had to deal with. So 1 co-op, but I did have some experience. And then after graduating, I ended up going into the workforce, and then it took me about 9 months to find a job that was willing to give me a chance. Like, I had many interviews where they were like, oh yeah, you're great, we love you, but you don't have the experience. And then they would pick someone over me, which is understandable. But it was just very disheartening at the same time. But I was very able to continuously get up and just do it over again, because you can't really give up.
No.
Like there's no
money in that.
There's no money in that. And there's no, like, I was very passionate about what I went to school for. I'm very passionate what I do now. And I just felt like I had to keep going. Like there was no other choice but to keep going.
Yeah, and here you are.
Yeah.
I know a lot of these guys are still in school and so haven't had quite the same, they haven't had to face the brute force of job applications. But I know that they've participated in a lot of different sort of interviews or competitions. And I'm wondering if anyone wants to speak sort of broadly about their experience, trying to sort of get ahead, trying to get recognized, trying to get that ticket into the job that you want, and some of the challenges that you faced.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Like, being an undergrad in probably the COVID times, school is pretty much a cakewalk. Like it doesn't take that much effort to really search stuff up. But you have so much time to really do things outside of school, and you really have nothing else to do while sitting at home. So, doing extracurriculars was really looked upon as a way to do something with your time, like 2 years during online school. So, coming into university in that kind of environment, it really pushes students who came into that situation to really go out there. So, I went into a university consulting group to do some pro bono work. I went into my school's accounting society, where I'm now the executive vice president. Me and my friend are currently trying to make a student group to help our students know how to cut cases and present them. And, just adding more and more and more. And at this point, it just seems like I'm adding more for the chance to kind of be looked at as someone different to get a job, right? Have that kind of reputation to my name. And while I do enjoy it, right, there's still that kind of like selfish motive behind it. Like, hey, I'm doing this to increase my name rep. So as soon as I'm in an interview, they know who I am instantly. And I know that they're the right employer because they know who I am.
So obviously Vanch is someone that I like having around, doing way more during his undergrad than I was ever doing. And that was sort of a moment of realization for me when I went back to school, did my MBA at Rotman, and found myself through UCG, University Consulting Group, pro bono consulting group, consult other not-for-profits in order to give people real experience. Our whole thing is real experience, real outcomes. So we're really sort of a spin-off actually from UCG. And it was then when I was interviewing these U of T undergrads and they're telling me about all the things that they're doing, the fact that they're even in that interview room, I'm like, I was not doing this. I was either working at a bar or drinking at that same bar during my undergrad. So lots of really capable, smart young people out there hustling way more than potentially the generations before them. But will it be enough? I wonder, Vanch, what are your thoughts on like the return on investment of education? You were thinking about going and doing a master's, either within the current economic environment or even outside of it.
Yeah, funny enough, one part of me wanting to do a master's is one, being able to get to a job that I'm going to be very happy in, something like, a BCG, a McKinsey, et cetera. And the second part is that we're in a recession right now, interest rates rising really highly, to the point where, a lot of companies can't really afford to take on more students, just because, they don't have enough funds in order for their salary. That's why you see a lot of tech companies kind of laying off a lot of people, and, doing a master's, like taking out like 200K on debt is just kind of me delaying my graduation so I can graduate at a time where interest rates are low enough to the point I can get that job at BCG if I really wanted it, right? Right now, I see it kind of as like a luck base. Like if you graduate during COVID, when I want to say around 40% of jobs given to students, because that was the numbers given to us at my school at TMU, they were just taken right out off of them, right? And you see something similar now. I think it was like 10 to 20%. And when you get past a recession like COVID, there's so many more opportunities because there's just so many more positions open, and companies have a lot more funding. So for me, it just seems like I'm kind of wasting money right now, and I'm going to keep on doing it until I find the perfect time.
I thought you were in finance.
I
I just want to say that from one of the older generations perspective, seeing somebody like you who has the drive and who is working on the education, and it's not just the education, but it's also doing this, that's rare. That is rare. And so if a potential employer comes along and sees that, then you have increased your chances of employment 30-fold, just by virtue of the fact that these are the things that you've done and continue to do. And you've got a plan for, okay, so we're in a recession and interest rates and yada, yada, yada. I'm going to take on another $200,000 worth of debt and blah, blah, blah. But when I do graduate, I'm going to be able to. So it's rare. It's rare. And that's something that's an accomplishment that you should be proud of.
Thank you.
Banj is out here hustling, winning all kinds of case competitions from his bedroom over COVID. Sorry. Yeah. I just want to keep an eye on time. We do want this to be a short and sweet event, and I would like other people to have a chance, but please pipe in.
Well,
on the
I
next.
was just gonna say that sometimes doing the thing is more valuable than like a credential.
Mhm.
So in terms of like my work in the circular economy, there is no educational program for reuse or circular materials or recycling. You just have to go and do it, and then people hire you because you've done it, and that is true. I think regardless, is that the value of a credential is declining, and overall people just want to see that you can learn anything from the internet. So then the question is, can
Honestly.
you learn it and then apply it and have it be useful? And that is just a matter of personality and drive.
Perfect segue, because Wade has some thoughts on do I do a PhD? Do I not do a PhD, right? Do I get the credential, or do I go into the workforce and do the thing?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I always said when I started my master's, because I wanted to go into physical therapy school, and that didn't quite work out for me. And then I was going to sort of extend my undergrad, increase the GPA, reapply, do that whole bit. But then I had the opportunity to do sort of an academic thesis-based master's. So I said, sure, I'll increase my GPA doing that as well. And then reapply, chase that physical therapy dream. But, I guess when I started that, I always told my supervisors, I don't want to do a PhD. I want to get out into the workforce.
Don't make me do it.
Exactly. I'm not going to do it. And then, catch me a year later doing a PhD. But the point being is that I always really saw the value in just getting out into the workforce. And but that said, there's a lot of value in doing a PhD. So I learned like really great critical thinking skills, got to fine tune those. But I think the fundamental foundation was there already when I had my master's. And so when you look at it from the business perspective, making the transition from academia to the private sector, or any sort of business related venture, is a bit of a challenge. And it's especially hard to do with just an academic master's. So one of the, reasons why I did my PhD was to help to make that transition. But I believe that I would have been ready to make that transition sooner. And so there's definitely value for businesses in valuing education a little bit less and seeing the value in, an academic master's rather than a PhD. And if you think of cost savings, for example, hiring me 4 years ago would have been starting at a lower rate of pay. You look at a 10-year period, it's a lot less expensive for them over that 10-year period versus hiring me now as someone with a PhD in a few months, for example. And so there's cost savings for the business. And the other factor is that, say I started with an organization 4 years ago, I would already be 4 years into my tenure at that company, be a very valuable contributor to the team likely. So.
Yeah. It's like, do you want to hire a PhD in rehab science, or do you want to hire someone who will become a PhD in your business, right? In your industry. And I think what Mika said, for those who might not have heard online, but sometimes doing the thing, and actually, fun fact, New Territory is our operating name, is our brand. But when I founded this corporation, when I registered it, it's actually called the Do Group. And it's because the act of doing, acting on ideas, action, period, like throwing together an event and having wonderful people come together to do that, I think has inherent value that lasts beyond any knowledge acquisition. Now, we talked about, cost savings for business in terms of, changing that equation in terms of where value comes from, experience versus education. But I wonder if we can talk about, before we change everything having to do education, what if it's changing things in terms of hiring practices, talent pools that businesses are looking at, considering, and also what they're sort of asking, right? So it would be one thing if they hired you into a job after a master's to do something you liked, but it'd be a different thing if they hired you after doing a master's to do something that, we joked before the event, like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So why did I bother doing that 6 years of work only to have a job that, yeah, pays the bills, but also doesn't progress the business further, doesn't progress my career further. So I'm wondering thoughts on how business is and maybe could differently look at the talent that they're hiring, sourcing, training, etc.
I definitely think they could, like take a bit of a broader perspective and like look at who is heavily educated and who isn't, and actually give the opportunity to uneducated people and then leave the opportunities for more highly educated people, for people who actually need it. Because when we give people with PhDs and like high education, low wage jobs, we're basically like giving them this door and we're saying, no, you can't keep progressing unless you keep going. But you've already spent thousands of dollars. You've already like, pardon my French here, been busting your ass through school trying to find that job already. So to meet that dead end one, your journey almost like never ends,
Yeah.
And to continuously keep searching and never get that experience or opportunity, it's just really like depressing,
Yeah.
So I definitely think they should have a bit of a broader perspective.
We were talking beforehand and having this conversation so that we could be ready for the audience. And one of the themes that kind of came up when we were talking about Wade and Lily's experience was around like a collaboration, a joint, like your career as a young person being a joint venture between you and your employer. So instead of them saying, do you meet all these requirements? If not, go away, get them and come back. It's, okay, I see where you need like room for improvement, but your character is good. Your willingness to learn is good. There's a lot of sort of raw material I can work with here. Like, come along on this journey with me. Let's spend 2 years getting you to fill those gaps into. And honestly, as we've talked about, you don't need 2 years unless you really are hiring them for some like sophisticated research lab work. I would recommend just going straight to the PhD because you'll save yourself a lot of time and headache. And lawsuits probably. So, but other than that, other than the most serious and high risk of situations, I would say a joint venture between the employer and the employee, I think would yield much better outcomes for both sides of the coin. Yes, Quentin.
Yeah, so coming back to automation, CEO, I think the ZipRecruiter said, don't do those fancy resumes that make you stand out. We match keywords. Right, so that 2 years experience, that filters out 99% of you before anybody even looks at your resume.
Yeah.
So how do you do a joint venture when people are now just going through algorithms to talk to you without, I guess, emphasizing networking, which I've seen lead to, again, you drink more beer in university, and
Correct.
so did I, and so did my boss. I see lots of people who weren't doing those other things, but networking, have friends of friends that get in more so than extra education.
Totally. I would point to, who's not using algorithms? Small businesses in terms of hiring practices. So yeah, ZipRecruiter or the people who are maybe hiring them. And when I say small businesses, that's a very wide range. But so maybe the ones up at the 100 employee mark are, but 98% in Canada are 20 employees or fewer. And they are so busy that they can't even look at what software programs are out there that they could be using to analyze your resume. Yeah.
Just like from the perspective of a business and this idea of experience is like very frequently, especially if you're a small business owner, what you want is somebody who can do the job already that you're hiring for. So I think when it comes to like, hey, do you have experience? It's a quick like check differentiator that this person could probably do the job that I'm hiring them for without me having to spend months of my time and thousands of dollars investing in them to start this job and not actually be able to do it yet.
Yeah.
So I think there's also like, and it's really unfortunate that I think right now a lot of students are in this sandwich generation where we have a massive supply of people with degrees and a lot fewer, like there's not as many jobs that require those degrees, right? And
Yes.
so when you're an employer and you have, dozens of people applying to your job that all have degrees, then the differentiator does become, do you have the experience already to do this job? Yes or no? So it's like really challenging because like one, AI is eroding the value of education, but students are investing tons of dollars in this education. They're coming out of it with a perceived value equation in their mind of what they think they're worth in the marketplace. And the marketplace is saying, well, you're not worth it to me because there are thousands of you.
Yes.
And I could easily hire any one of these thousands of people, or even somebody who doesn't have a degree to do this job.
And that's why I think I go back to the joint venture being like, it's a personal relationship probably, right? I'm a small business owner, but a lot of small business owners, it doesn't mean that you're not profitable and that you don't have, a cottage and a home and a nice car. Like I actually saw a stat from Stats Canada that said the proportion of profits total in Canada from small business went up. So basically our large enterprises weren't as big of a portion of the total profit. Now there's many, many, many small businesses, so it's still not that they're like raking in millions each, but they do have margin. They do have what I would call like resilience or like cushion, where they could spend 3-6 months with an employee before they know the job. And that's that joint venture. It's like, okay, I'm going to hire you now at like a reasonable wage. And most of what I expect of you is learning. That's kind of how I've done it here. But these are just ideas that we're tossing around that hopefully inspire some of the people online as well.
I mean, coming from a small business that we have about 40 people, and we hire a lot of times we have to hire professionals because we need an engineer, you need an engineer, right? That does come up.
Yes.
But fit and honestly, looking at a resume that has a lot of experience from a standpoint of starting groups or being part of these particular clubs or these initiatives in my community and all those things resonate because we don't use AI crawling software to look at a resume. We look at a resume and honestly, I'll take fit over experience pretty much any day of the week because I look at it as this person's going to add value to the company as a cultural thing. This person's going to add value from a growth standpoint, and maybe it's something that we don't necessarily have in-house, or it's not exactly what we were looking for, but we can teach people things. We can teach people a lot of stuff, but we can't teach people not to be jerks. That's one thing. We've never been able to figure that one out, right? So we're looking for good people to join us and to continue to grow our company and then get this, we want to increase our culture. We're not talking about making it the same. We want to add to our culture. It becomes different every time we add somebody. It's better because it's bigger. I think that's the big focus that I look at when we're coming through a process to try to hire somebody. The education, honestly, we need it at certain spots. Like there is a key piece of that, but we also are willing to grow our own. And the other thing that comes up, honestly, is where are we with our business cycle at that time, right? Like right now, we need some depth. So we're looking for some more experienced people, but sometimes we don't need as much depth and we're trying to grow our own. So we have our succession plan worked in place. So it definitely comes into play, but truthfully, it's how are you going to add to the culture of the company that I think is most important when I'm bringing someone on board.
That voice was Cameron from Garrett's Engineering. If you want to follow along on their journey as they take what's that soup, a mulligatawny, where you just keep adding different soups to it, as they take that approach to their culture and their business growth, we look forward to seeing you at 100 employees. Guys, I'm so sorry. I love the peanut gallery, but we are over time already.
Oh, sorry.
I know, it's great. I just want to make sure that we hear from Sarah. I know she has a lot to say as a almost PhD graduate. Done a lot of research, spent a lot of time in labs, have a good perspective on the strength of the education landscape in Canada. So the question is, yes, there's room for improvement when it comes to education versus experience and matching that supply to the demand in the business landscape in Canada. But what about the knowledge creation and innovation? Like, are we still performing? Are we still doing a good job when we're at school? When we're looking at institutions?
We're doing pretty good. Like if we wanted to all give Canada a little round of applause, when it comes to educated people and the percent of people we have with degrees past secondary school, we're actually performing super well in different ranking lists. We're even number 1. And when it comes to the Global Innovation Index, we're number 4 when it comes to the output of knowledge generation, which is phenomenal for the size of our country, how many people we have. But the problem really is that when we look at what that's outputting with our economy, it's really not great. So there's we've slipped from spot 8 to spot 16 when it comes to the innovation index over the past decade. And one of the biggest issues is really our inability to commercialize and our inability to have the knowledge stay in Canada. So even when it comes to Canadian inventors, 50% of the patents that they're making, and actually going through the legal process with, they're not doing in Canada. They're going elsewhere. So that's impacting other countries' economies and not our own. And it's this gap that we have in our ability to really like take the knowledge from universities, take the things that we're creating, like AI, like different things, and keep it here. So there's this massive brain drain to different countries of PhD students having to go and find jobs in the States, as well as like even our own technology that we're creating, having to move to other markets because we can't keep them.
What are the systemic barriers in Canada that exist that don't exist, for example, in the US that would contribute to the transition of knowledge generated in Canada and then moving across the border, for example?
There's lots of factors, and some of them can be from the side you want to look at, or who you want to blame maybe for it, and it could even be
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want someone to blame.
Keep their names right now. Yeah.
We could blame our dollar. We could just say that it's just like so much more interesting to go to the States. Like I actually have a number of friends that are in AI now, and they have all moved to the States. Every single one of them lives in California, or they've moved to Seattle, and it's just because there aren't the jobs for them here. And they also make more money there. So like one of my friends owns a house in Toronto, like bought one, but to keep the house, she left her job here and moved to Seattle.
There's a lot of like US versus Canada comparisons, like even TechTO event this past Monday, gentleman managing partner of a marketing firm out of New York, but with a location in Toronto, said Canadians build businesses and US build brands. And there's this common idea that you would build a business in Canada in order to sell it to a US buyer. Whereas if you are the US based startup, you want world domination. But we don't think, I mean, US is this like catch-22. It's convenient because we can sell a lot of things to the US, both because we have a lot of great things that they need, talent being one of them, obviously resources like minerals and oil, et cetera, being another, and our dollar makes that transaction favorable to them. So that has actually been a huge piece in strengthening our economy, but it's also almost like a catch-22 because it's almost like too easy to just go to the US instead of building it here. We are way over time. Always try to make things short and sweet, but of course we've done a lot of thinking about this over the course of the year, a lot of research, and we invited a great group of people who are entrepreneurs themselves, who are educated folks leading other people themselves and have an opinion on this. And so I'm so grateful. Thanks first and foremost, Analog Audience, for putting on pants and actually, you know, trekking somewhere. I know sometimes it's like a huge undertaking these days to do that. And also thank you so much to our digital audience for taking a risk for yet another fun online event. We very much appreciate you as well. The goal here, invite you into the conversation. What we ask is that you continue the conversation, keep the conversation going. That could mean doing as little as liking and sharing our content as we share our content and others. But it could also mean continuing in your own career paths and with your own networks to have these ideation sessions. What could the future of Canada look like? What could the future of a career in Canada look like? So follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube if you're not already, and share our stuff. And thank you so much.